Hello students, welcome to Civil Services Primetime News of the CivicCentre IAS. Today we will discuss about 6 important topics that were frequently seen in news. Most of the topics are related to Middle East conflicts, and at the same time, two topics are important from India's neighborhood perspective, that is Bhutan, and at the same time India-Pakistan dispute, especially for the estuary tidal of Sar Creek, which was also known as Banganga. So the first topic is Bagram Air Base. So why it was seen in news especially? Recently, Taliban government has rejected to re-hand over it to the US authorities. So that's why this topic is important. And the second one is India-Bhutan Railways Projects. Two projects have been commissioned after long negotiations of 2 decades. The railway projects have been announced in 2005, but in 2025 they have been commissioned. Third topic is Sar Creek. It is a dispute, especially on the western front of India with the Pakistan. Fourth one, the state of social justice report over the last 30 years, how the countries have achieved social justice through economic, political and other means, which was released by ILO, International Labour Organization. And fifth one is Port of Pasni, beside or adjacent to the Gwadar port. This Pakistani government has recently leased this port to the US government. That is the fifth one. Sixth one, Chinese dominance in the electrolyser market. Nothing but your supply chain disruptions after the COVID-19 are why supply chain disruptions were very important when it comes to Chinese dominance in the Middle East region or at the same time India's adjacent countries also. So let's try to understand Bagram Air Base. Why America wants Taliban for Bagram Air Base, and at the same time Taliban has rejected. Most of the countries in the world right now have agreed Taliban as a legitimate government in India. So sooner or later, the Indian government is also inviting the Taliban top leaders in New Delhi for the discussions for the developmental activities that were paused earlier because of internal conflicts between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So mostly if you look at India's strategic alliance partners, whether it should be Russia, USA or European Union countries, these were now officially recognized Taliban-led Afghanistan government as a legitimate government, and these leaders are legitimate leaders also. So what is the significance of location? So the first one is the strategic location. It is located in Parwan province, which links major Afghanistan highways. If you look at Afghanistan geography, it is not as easy as our lands, right? So it will connect to the Central Asian portions. So obviously you need a better infrastructure facilities. That's why this Bagram Air Base is important. And at the same time, war on the terror that was by US government, it plays an important role, making it a vital gateway to the Central and South Asia. Because of the strategic location that was there in Bagram, it plays an important role to gateway for Central and South Asia. That is the first one. And when it comes to counter-terrorism role, it served as the epicenter of the war on terror campaign, which was especially launched by US government. Of course, after COVID-19, US government under the Donald Trump, first term of Donald Trump, has withdrawn their forces from the Afghanistan, enabling strikes on Al-Qaeda, Taliban, ISK and other terror groups. To fight these extremist or terrorist groups, this Bagram Air Base has played an important or critical role. And obviously, if you look at Afghanistan, Pakistan or Myanmar, so whenever any mineral resources are there in these countries, most of the times the countries which has high wealth, they are competitive. Control of Bagram offers access to Afghanistan 1 to 3 trillion mineral resources. So it has a mineral resource rich nation, which were critical for our electric vehicle segments, electronics and defense technologies. So here mineral wealth also plays an important role for Bagram Air Base. And when it comes to proximity to the rivals, if you look at historical background of Afghanistan and Pakistan, so in earlier cases especially, these bases were used by USA, USSR, and even some extent in recent times India also plays an important role. So from Bagram, United States intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance will be done, and at the same time it will also monitor the China's movements. China's Xinjiang and Russia's Central Asian sphere. From there itself they can control, they can watch, they can surveillance these activities of especially China and Russia. So why China and Russia are actively participated in these regions? Because of their mineral resources and at the same time geo-economic activities. Under China-Pakistan Economic Corridor or under One Belt One Road initiative, the China is aggressively building up their infrastructure in adjacent countries. That's why it's very important for US to gather the intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance efforts to monitor China and Russia. So what are the challenges to US re-entry? Already US has exited from this space, right, from Bagram. So if they want to come back to this region, what were the challenges that mostly they can encounter? Taliban's resistance, because Taliban is a legitimate government in Afghanistan now. The firm rejection of any foreign bases, framing it as a violation of Afghanistan's sovereignty. Just like how India has a sovereignty over its Jammu Kashmir region. If you take an example, in a similar way, the sovereignty of Afghanistan land will not be tolerated, will not be utilized by any foreign bases. That is the first challenge from Taliban's. Next one, regional pushback. Obviously, there are different players are playing in Afghanistan. Whether it should be China, Russia, Iran and Pakistan oppose US return, seeing it as a destabilizing action. Already, these regions, since from last 20 years, the war on terror campaign has been started by US government, and majority of the countries surrounding to these Afghanistan region has completely destabilized because of US military interventions and at the same time proxy wars between different countries. So obviously the countries which were already present there, they will simply oppose the US return as a strategic way. Next one, operational cost. Reoccupation would require 10,000 plus troops and billions in reconstruction, making it both politically and militarily costly. So if you look at the geographical area of Afghanistan, mostly hilly and terrain areas. So if you want to reoccupy these areas, you need to mobilize the troops and at the same time basic infrastructure and reconstruction activities that were damaged by earlier governments or earlier countries, which is making it both politically and militarily very costly for the countries. So that's why these are the challenges. China's defense posture. Beijing's rapid nuclear modernization program, SLBM-3 missile silos, mobile systems makes Bagram a flashpoint in the US-China rivalry. Already, China is developing these facilities at Bagram Air Base. So if US wants to come back to this area for their strategic significance, then obviously there is a clash between US and China. What were the implications for India? So far we have discussed this topic under the regional context of Afghanistan and the countries that were directly engaged in Afghanistan. Then what is the implication for India? Heightened terror risk. Absence of US monitoring allows Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed greater freedom in Afghan soil. So if you look at the Pakistan and Afghanistan border, these are the terror camps. So if US is not actively monitoring these regions from these bases, then obviously there is a greater risk on India, especially from Afghanistan soil, because there were active terrorist groups were present. Next one, China factor. Any Chinese foothold would tighten India's encirclement under Beijing's string of perils theory. So under strings of perils theory, especially China wants to encircle India, especially the smaller nations which were surrounding by India. The China wants to occupy these countries. So mostly what China had done, they have given loans. If these loans are not viable in nature, obviously they will take away for lease. So just like if you take an example of Sri Lanka's Hambantota port, which has taken for 99 years lease. Checkbook diplomacy or debt trap diplomacy, popularly known in international relations. So any Chinese foothold would tighten India's encirclement. So if Chinese are actively engaging in these regions, whether it should be for their political or for their economical or any geo significance, obviously it has tightened India's position. Next one, strategic leverage loss. Earlier, India benefited indirectly from the US presence. Now, focus has shifted to diplomatic engagement and aid. So, in earlier cases, what was the situation? US government or US troops are providing security, surveillance and intelligence gathering for the Indian troops who are working in the Afghanistan. But the responsibility now has completely shifted and we need to have a more diplomatic engagement now. So that is the strategic leverage loss for the Indian government. Next one, connectivity impact. Projects like Chabahar Port, Afghanistan, Central Asia corridor face uncertainty because the Taliban itself earlier recognized as a terrorist group, and at the same time there are different terrorist groups are present in Afghanistan. So we don't know exactly why these connectivity projects might stop in future. So that is the biggest connectivity impact for India also. So that is the first one, completely about your Bagram Air Base, why it was in news. Next one, India-Bhutan Railway Projects. India-Bhutan strategic partnership has started as earlier as our cultural civilizations. But when it comes to technical understanding of India-Bhutan relations, there was a memorandum of understanding between these two countries in 2005. So according to this MOU, India and Bangladesh wants to create railway projects between these two countries. But finally in 2025, they have commissioned these two projects. So these two projects were at Gelepu and Samste. Why particularly at these places? If you look at Gelepu and Samste are the major export-import hubs in the Bhutan. And at the same time, there is a strategic significance of this corridor, which is very India-Bhutan 700-kilometer border. So that is the first one. Gelepu is being developed as a mindfulness city. And Samste is being developed as an industrial town by the government of Bhutan. Here, these two cities especially, one is mindfulness city and another one is actively developing as an industrial hub in Bhutan. What is the significance of this project? Which obviously strengthen the ties between India and Bhutan. And developmental assistance, when it comes to developmental assistance from India's perspective, this initiative builds on India's long-standing role as a Bhutan's largest developmental partner in recent commitments, approximately $1.2 billion for Bhutan's 13th five-year plan. In earlier cases also, Bhutan is actively engaging in trade talks and in finance from the Indian government. At the same time, there is a problem with the Chinese government also. Sometimes Chinese directly or indirectly involving in these projects. So that's why if you look at developmental assistance from India, it is one of the largest commitment recently that has been given by government of India to the Bhutan. So which is approximately $1.2 billion for its 13th five-year plan. Just like how we had a 5-year plans till 2017. That was the last 12th five-year plan of India, right? In a similar way, Bhutan is also practicing these 5-year plans. and enhanced contact which facilitate the smooth passenger and cargo movement is expected to boost people to people connection and cultural exchanges. Obviously, whenever any countries are going for any trade, especially India's adjacent countries, you can expect more people to people contact and cultural exchanges between these two nations especially. So that can be done. Counterbalancing China's influence, the railway lines are located near the sensitive Siliguri corridor, which is nothing but your chicken's neck area, a narrow strip of land linking mainland India to its northeastern states. If you look at northeastern states, these are very fragile in nature. So directly or indirectly, Chinese influence was there in earlier histories of modern India also. So to counterbalance China's influence, these railway lines are very near to the sensitive area of chicken corridor. By improving security and supply chains in this region, the project helps mitigate potential security risk in the Chinese growing regional footprint. To counter the Chinese regional footprint, whether it should be Bhutan, Nepal or Myanmar or any or west side of India, Pakistan or Afghanistan, if you actively pursuing our commitments towards the smaller nations and fulfilling their obligations, then obviously Chinese counter will be nullified. So what are the challenges? So whenever any land issues, if you take these railway projects, obviously the railway should be built on generally on land. Then there is a problem of land acquisition and terrain. Southern Bhutan and Northeast India have a hilly and forested terrain, which makes the land acquisition very complex process and time consuming. So if you look at South Bhutan and Northeastern state, these are mostly forested and hilly in nature. Negotiating with local communities and obtaining environmental clearances could cause delays. So whenever any project has to be done, there is an environmental impact assessment should be done. So which takes some time. Even in some extreme cases which are ended up in courts also. So that's why permission from local communities and at the same time environmental clearances are very must, and these are sometimes causing delays also. Construction and engineering. Projects require numerous bridges, viaducts and underpasses in challenging topography. So it is not a very plain railway lines, which requires numerous bridges, just like in Jammu Kashmir, how we have built these type of railway lines under BRO program, Border Roads Organization. In a similar way, the same efforts should be needed by bridges, viaducts and underpasses in challenging topography of both Bhutan and northeastern parts of India. There are risks of geological hazards such as landslides, river floods and seismic activities are also some of the major risks involved in these activities. And strategic and geopolitical risk. Proximity to the China, Bhutan, India border requires infrastructure security and strategic considerations. Here you should not only focus on Bhutan's requirement. Here the area itself is very sensitive in nature for the external and both internal factors. So obviously you need to more focus on infrastructure security and strategic considerations while taking any decisions regarding these type of projects. That is the second one, discussion related to India-Bhutan relations, especially railway. Next, third one would be Sar Creek. Sar Creek is also known as Ban Ganga. In earlier times, it was known as Ban Ganga. So in recent times, India has given a strong warning to Pakistan. Any misadventure in Sar Creek sector, citing its growing military build-up in the disputed region. Pakistan has actively pursuing its military presence in this Sar Creek region. So obviously, India's defense minister has sent a strong warning to Pakistan. If anything would happen to this dispute region, then we must take a decisive response to your misadventures in Sar Creek. So what is Sar Creek? It is a 96 kilometers long estuary in the Ran of Kutch. These are very important for your prelims point of view. Located between the state of Gujarat from India side and Sindh province from Pakistan side. Still, they are considered just like how our states, in a similar way, provinces are also same. It is a tidal water body that flows into the Arabian Sea. So, these were very important. So, the first one is Ran of Kutch, the location, and which drains into the Arabian Sea. The dispute revolves around the maritime boundary between sovereignty over Sar Creek. To whom this belongs, Sar Creek region. That is the dispute between India and Pakistan. The area is rich in marine resources and biodiversity. That is the most important factor or aspect why majority of the countries have disputed for small lands or geographical regions, because abundance of mineral wells and large scale biodiversities. So these are the major reasons. The Sar Creek's demarcation affects the exclusive economic zone, which determines the rights to fishing, mineral exploration and maritime security. So if this Sar Creek dispute completely favors to the Indian government, then obviously we will have exclusive economic zones on these international waters, which have a fishing, mineral exploration and maritime security, which will be in our hands. Let's suppose in otherwise case, the complete will be for the Pakistan. That's why it is a in dispute nature. So what is the strategic and economic importance of this creek? Naval security. The dispute affects India's, Pakistan's naval patrols and coastal security. So it is very tidal estuary located at water body. So obviously India's and Pakistan's naval patrols and coastal security will affect. The region has rich fishery resources and potential oil and gas reserves. These are not proven yet, but we are expecting potential oil and gas reserves are present in this Sar Creek area and fishery resources. So that is also one of the importance of this Sar Creek dispute. Pakistan's alignment with China's Belt and Road Initiative, which raises concerns about India's western coastline. So under Belt and Road Initiative, China and Pakistan has come to an agreement for their infrastructure development and for their strategic areas on investments. So obviously India is worrying very much about India's western coastline, which has a connection with Pakistan.
Hello everyone. As you all know, Civil Services Prime Time is one of its kind initiative where we are teaching the students current affairs related to the particular subject one day at a time. అంటే ఒక వారంలో జరిగిన కరెంట్ అఫైర్స్ అన్ని ఒక సబ్జెక్ట్ కి సంబంధించి మేము ఒక రోజులో చెప్తున్నాం. సో దిస్ ఈజ్ ఆల్ బికాస్ ఆఫ్ ద రివర్స్ ఇంజనీరింగ్ టెక్నిక్. బికాస్ మీరు ప్రతి వీడియో చూసినట్టయితే ఎండ్ లో ప్రీవియస్ ఇయర్ క్వశ్చన్స్ ప్రిలిమ్స్ చేస్తున్నాము, అలాగే ఒక క్వశ్చన్ మెయిన్స్ చేస్తున్నాం. సో in order to get daily updates at 7 o'clock sharp as we are doing it, subscribe చేసుకోండి, అలాగే bell కూడా click చేయండి, so that 7 o'clock కి మీకు immediate గా notification వస్తుంది.
So what is the way forward for India? What are the options available for India? The first one is negotiated settlements. Obviously India and Pakistan should come to one desk and having a mutual and meaningful discussions regarding the Sar Creek dispute. So most of the times this won't work out. A mutually agreed maritime boundary through diplomacy. You can done it through diplomacy. International arbitration, or else you can go for any arbitration, taking the issue to UN class tribunal or International Court of Justice. Majority of the times, whatever the decisions that they have been given through these ICJ or any tribunals, these countries are rogue states. These countries are not accepting their awards. Confidence building measures, joint patrolling. By doing joint patrolling between India and Pakistan ports, information sharing and marine resource cooperation, that is one confidence building measure between India and Pakistan. What are the India's strategic considerations under Sar Creek dispute? Enhance coastal security. Strengthening Indian Navy and Coast Guard presence should be very much needed for our India, because it is already in dispute nature, and apart from Pakistan we should fight internally to China also. China is actively engaging or promoting Pakistan's needs. So here India should have to confront with two nations. One is China and Pakistan. Pakistan has a direct confrontation, but indirect confrontation should be China. That's why you need to strengthen your Indian Navy and coastal guards, especially in this region. Mapping the potential hydrocarbon reserves in the region, that is the one of the advantage. Engage in international partners to mediate and pressure Pakistan. So does not happen. Why? Because any dispute between India and Pakistan should be between bilateral. They have to resolve their differences through any diplomatic channel, or track 1 diplomacy, track 2 diplomacy, or track 2.4 diplomacy. But India and Pakistan sometimes might be accepting other countries' views also, but India at any cost does not take any considerations from any Western nations also. That is why the diplomatic push should have a minimal impact on these type of disputes. That is the third one, the Sir Creek dispute between India and Pakistan. Next one, the State of Social Justice report, which has been recently released by International Labour Organization, evaluates 30 years of global progress. It is for the 30 years. 1995 Social Development Summit, and assess the ongoing deficits in justice, equality and inclusion. Let's try to understand what is this social justice report all over. It has a 4 foundational pillars. The first one is fundamental human rights and capabilities, which means ensuring freedom, equality and social protection for each and everyone irrespective of their genders. So that is the first one. Equal access to opportunities. Here opportunities are nothing but simply removing the barriers to education. There should not be any barrier to education, employment and fair wages. Whether it should be men or women, we should carefully give the opportunities for both the genders. Fair distribution, equitable sharing of economic growth benefits. The economic growth, the benefits of economic growth or the yields of economic growth should be distributed to the society in equal manner. There should not be any inequalities, whether it should be income inequalities or wealth inequalities or social inequalities. It should not be there. Fair transitions, managing environmental, digital and demographic changes inclusively. Whatever the changes that they have been come up, whether it should be digital or environmental changes or demographic, population or pyramids, obviously you need to include each and everything in the economic growth process. So these are the 4 fundamental pillars. So what are the trends and progress in India? When it comes to India's case, the poverty reduction, multidimensional poverty in India fell from 29% to 11%, aligning with ILO's global progress theme. So sometimes you might have a doubts, right? So there is one organization, Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, is also publishing inflation, unemployment data, which is projecting not the exactly projected by Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog and other institutions, international institutions are projecting majority of the poor populations, they have been taken out from poverty basket. But according to CMIE, it is completely narrating different story. Education gains, secondary completion rate reached 79%, female literacy 77%, reflecting major strides in human capability building. So the female literacy rate has one of the important aspect. Schemes such as PM Kishan, Ayushman Bharat, E-Shram have expanded inclusion. So if you look at E-Shram portal, mostly gig workers, unorganized workers, wage laborers, daily wage laborers, casual workers, these are having a E-Shram portal logins or registrations, so that the government benefits will be directly reached to these workers. Ayushman Bharat insurance for each and everyone, Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat. PM Kisan, agriculture income support to the farmers. So these are mostly inclusive in nature, which covering 55 crores unorganized workers. So here mostly the social protection comes into the picture, because majority of the India's working population is in unorganized sector. That's why it is very important, the social protection. Each and everyone should be under the same umbrella. Despite reforms, informality still persists. There are labor market reforms that have been done in the country post COVID-19 also. Mostly all the labor codes have been codified, but still there are some issues in the informal sector. Over 80% of India's workforce remain outside formal contracts, reflecting the global trend of limited improvement in job quality. So whenever there is no formal contract between employer and employees, then obviously there is a hire and fire policy. Whenever they want to hire, they will hire. Whenever they want to fire the employees, they will fire. So there is no social protection. There is no insurance facilities. So there is no job guarantee. Just like your gig workers. If you look at gig workers' life, in recent times also, majority of the gig workers have come to the roads, because we are also part of our India's economic growth story. Why can't we include in inclusive economic models? So that is the labor market issues. Female labor force participation stands at 37%, still below the global average. Out of 100, let's suppose 37% are only females if you take a global average, which mirrors the ILO's findings on structural inequalities. Improvements. What were the areas where India has considerably improved? Human development, nothing but increase in literacy. Literacy rates have increased. Skill trainings. Government of India is actively promoting institutions. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, Skill India. These were providing skills for the relevant industries and access to healthcare. So healthcare facilities are also have been increased because of Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Yojana and respect to state government's initiatives for the population. Child labor reduction, strengthened monitoring through NCLP and education incentives. Based on these incentives, the child's dropout ratio from the schools have been mostly neglected, mostly dropped. So that is the good initiative. Social security, growth in pension and maternity schemes under Social Security Code 2020, which has both pension and maternity schemes. Digital empowerment initiatives like Jandan, Aadhaar, Mobile, JAM, Trinity. Don't confuse it with just a minute session like your BTech classes, right? So whenever there is any sessions regarding lab sessions, you have to just a minute. In 1 minute, you have to discuss one topic. That's a completely different story. Jandan, Aadhaar, Mobile. Jandan, which is a zero frill accounts. You don't want to maintain minimum balance. Pradhan Mantri Jandan Yojana under PMJDY. Aadhaar for the authentication purpose. And Mobile to Jandan Aadhaar Mobile have reduced leakages because Aadhaar and Mobile by default they have reduced the leakages and enhanced equity in resources delivery. The deliveries from the governments under e-governance should reach the right persons. What are the challenges identified by ILO? The wealth gap has widened, redistribution remains weak. Nothing but the inequalities are still existing and still exacerbating. Whether it should be Oxfam report or any other report. In India's case, the billionaire Raj have again comes into the mainstream. The inequalities have widened. Here, nothing but the redistribution of resources to the each and everyone were very weak. 58% of global workers are informal with limited access to labor rights and protection. So here not only India's perspective, when it comes to global, 58% of global workers are informal in nature. Obviously, your rights regarding the labor rights and your social protection, these are at the stake. Gender and birth inequality. 71% of income depends on birth circumstances. Gender gap remains static. Declining trust in institutions. Public disillusionment with the fairness and accountability threatens democracy. So majority of the times the people have lost their faith in institutions. Transition risk. Digital divide, climate job losses, aging populations may deepen inequalities. Digital divide is nothing but just like how rich and poor in the society. In a similar way, digital access, whether rural areas and urban areas have equally having the digital access or not. Climate, job losses and aging population are also deepen the inequalities in the system. And what are the ILO recommendations? There are some recommendations that have been given by ILO. Social justice in all policy. Integrate equity considerations in finance, trade, climate and healthy governance. Nothing but inclusive governance approach. Whether it should be finance, trade, climate or health. Each and everything should be equally distributed. That is the recommendation. Rebuild trust in institutions. How can you rebuild a trust in institution? Let's suppose if you take an example of any institution that is not under the purview of government. So in future, you are expecting it should be under the regulatory purview of governments. Then obviously they need to maintain transparency. Whatever the decisions that have been taken, there should be a transparency. And whatever the actions that have been taken should have a accountability and inclusive. Each and every one of that organization have been a active note or not. That is the way. Transparency, accountability and inclusive dialogue. By making all these, you can rebuild the trust on the institutions. Invest in people. Expand access to education, skills, lifelong learning to close digital and gender gaps. So obviously you can invest in your education, skills and digital learning so that the digital and gender gaps would be reduced or minimized. Strengthening social protection, universal coverage. You should not exclude anyone. Portable benefits and fair minimum wages. These were some of the social protection recommendations. Ensure climate and digital transitions create decent work and protect displaced works. Because of climate change or other digital transitions, you should not lose your jobs, right? You should get a decent work and protect your displaced workers also. Reinforce multilateralism to address global inequality and migration fairly. So these multilateral institutions, to some extent, they have been failed because of the countries, especially Western countries or developed countries. They are not seeing these multilateral institutions working for them. That's why mostly bilateral relations they have been developed. So reinforce multilateralism to address global inequality and migration fairly. So that is the ILO recommendations on social protection. Next one, ports of Pasni. If you look at the graph, Iran from Chabahar port, we are actively building this Chabahar port, Gwadar port and Port Pasni, Pakistan. So already the Pasni port, the Pakistan has proposed allowing the US, United States of America, to build and operate a commercial deep water port at Pasni, which is under the Balochistan region, aimed at exporting critical minerals like copper and rare earths. Whenever you hear the news regarding any ports or any small geographical locations that were actively competing between different nations, mostly you can expect mineral resources or strategic significance of that areas. These were the major reasons for any country to actively pursuing their interest on another countries. In a similar way, the USA is also expecting to export these minerals from this Pasni port. But obviously, China, India, Iran, these are actively opposing this decision of Pakistan, because their ports are also adjacent to this Pasni port. So if US is actively involving in this Pasni port, then there might be a dispute between different nations. The port of Pasni is a small deep water harbor in Balochistan's Gwadar district, equipped with a fish harbor. There is a fish harbor already present. Cargo jetty and Pakistan Maritime Security Agency base. Originally designed for fisheries and coastal trade, now it figures Pakistan's proposal as a strategic mineral export terminal. So Pakistan wants to export from this terminal, but obviously Pakistan does not have finances. That most of us know. Each and every time they are going for a World Bank or IMF bankings. So obviously, why can't we give this port to USA? And obviously they will get their concessions and USA export their minerals. Situated on the Arabian Sea, about 70 miles east of China-backed Gwadar port and 100 miles from the Iran-Pakistan border that we have seen already in this map. It is proximity to India's Chabahar port, approximately 300 kilometers, places it at the heart of South Asia's emerging geostrategic maritime triangle, because India and Iran is actively pursuing Chabahar port, Gwadar port, China and Pakistan, on collaboration between these two countries, and Pasni. In future, if everything goes well, Pasni will be under the US-Pakistan hands. Aim of the proposal, nothing but Pakistan seeks to reduce dependence on China's Belt and Road Initiative. Why? Do you have any idea why suddenly Pakistan has shifted towards the USA? Because under Belt and Road Initiative, China is building dams, roads, rivers, everything, whatnot in a word. But what about the finances of Pakistan? If Pakistan does not give it back their loans in future, just like our how Sri Lanka as a port, Hambantota port has been given to the Pakistan, China, in a similar way, Pakistan also loses its sovereignty over their geographical area. So that's why Pakistan has strategically moved towards the USA, BRI, and attract US investment through commercial projects. It aims to export minerals such as copper, antimony and neodymium, essential for defense and green technologies. That's why USA is very actively interested. What are the key features? Proposed investment of $1.2 billion will be out for this, combining Pakistan federal funding and US private finance. So here Pakistan is not taking any risk basically, but US private finances are taking risk. Its plans include rail connectivity to the mineral-rich Rekotic belt and advanced cargo handling infrastructure. These will be key features of this proposal. Officials emphasize on project is non-military. So they have clearly mentioned that this port will not be utilized for not any military purposes, non-military in nature. Focusing solely on the economic collaboration between Pakistan and USA. That's where the drama starts. Next one and last one would be Chinese dominance in the electrolyzer markets. These electrolyzers, generally what they will do, they will split water into hydrogen and oxygen. So for our green technologies, these electrolyzers are very important. But obviously and unfortunately, we don't have electrolyzers facilities in India mostly. So we are importing from countries. So here the country is dominated by China. Electrolyzers vital for green hydrogen production, which are witnessing rising Chinese dominance, creating supply chain and strategic concerns for India. So whenever any supply chain disruptions are there in countries' critical minerals, then obviously it will have a strategic concerns for not only India, even for the dependent countries. So electrolyzers, it is a device that uses electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. When an electric current, preferably from renewable sources, passes through water, it breaks bond between hydrogen and oxygen atoms. What is the significance of this? The hydrogen produced is called green hydrogen when if renewable electricity is used. If you are using renewable electricity and you are producing this hydrogen, then it's called a green hydrogen, making it a clean fuel alternative. What is the significance of electrolyzers for India? So under green hydrogen mission, India aims to produce 5 MMT of green hydrogen by 2030, which necessitates the use of electrolyzers. So to reach 5 MMT of green hydrogen by 2030, electrolyzers are very important for India's green hydrogen mission. Energy security. Electrolyzers are reduced dependence on 85% of oil imports and costly liquefied LNG. So from energy security perspective, 85% of oil imports should be reduced and liquefied natural gas also. Industrial decarbonization. Green hydrogen can cut 20% of the emissions from hard to abate sectors. That is from industrial decarbonization perspective. Export potential. US CBM creates market for India to be a green hydrogen export hub. So there is a dispute going on between India and European Union. What is this? Carbon border adjustment management tax. So according to this, so the sectors, the export sectors from India, where these carbon footprints are high, obviously the European Union under the carbon border adjustment management mechanism, they did not take any exports from India. So if you develop these green hydrogen technologies, then obviously there is a beautiful market over European Union under carbon border adjustment management tax. So that is the export potential under EU is CBM. Support India's pledge to net zero by 2070. Panchamrit goals. Under Panchamrit goals, India wants to become a net zero by 2070. So that is the climate goals. And what are the challenges faced by India in the electrolyzer market? Cost barriers. Current cost of green hydrogen is 300 to 400 per kg compared to 150 per kg for grey hydrogen. So that is the cost barrier. Electrolyzers need iridium and platinum. So both have global supply less than 10 tons per year, with India importing more than 90% of such critical minerals. So that's why raw material dependence also one of the major challenges. India's domestic manufacturing capacity is less than 1 gigawatt compared to China's more than 20 gigawatts electrolyzer capacity as on 2024 data. Supply chain risk. China supplies 85% of the global electrolyzers, creating an energy security risk. So in future, let's say China doesn't want to export any critical minerals to the nation, then obviously supply chain risk will be the immediate threat. What is the way forward for the boosting electrolyzers market in India? Domestic manufacturing. Obviously, you need to manufacture these electrolyzers within India. Expand electrolyzer capacity under PLI scheme for green hydrogen, productive linked incentive schemes under Atmanirbhar Bharat Yojana. So obviously you need to focus more domestic creation, more domestic production in the India itself rather than completely focusing on China's exports. Critical mineral strategy. Secure supply chains via Australia for the lithium, Africa platinum group metals, and Middle East nickel and cobalt. So you need to diversify your critical minerals exports and imports also, so that you should not be worried about the supply chain risk in the immediate future from the China. Integrated ecosystem, hydrogen corridors and industrial hubs connecting producers and consumers. So from the producer perspective and from the consumer's perspective, nothing but demand side and supply side economics. So we should have a hubs or corridors so that both will be benefited. Best practices: EU Hydrogen Valley model, local clusters linking production, storage and end use, just like how European Unions are doing this for their green hydrogen projects. In a similar way, India should also consider this type of model. So that's why most of the times adoption is the best way that will be worked out for India. So that is the discussion for today's topics. Hope you enjoy the topics clearly. So if you have any doubts regarding these topics from these 6 areas, feel free to comment in our comment sections. And if you like these videos, please like the videos, share the fellow aspirants, and also comment on which topics you don't understand the background histories of the country's conflicts. We are very happy to help you on that topics also. So that is the discussion for this week. Hope you enjoy the topics also. Thank you.
CivicCentre IAS is offering Telangana Group 1 Prelims cum Mains classes as well as Andhra Pradesh Group 1 Prelims cum Mains classes in English medium for a period of 8 to 10 months. This also covers the complete NCERT textbooks and statewide textbooks. So what are you waiting for? Learn through reverse engineering technique today. Admissions are in progress. Join now. Visit our website. Thank you.